If we could consider each other a neighbor, a sister, or brother, it could be a wonderful, wonderful world. It could be a wonderful world. Oh yes, it could be a wonderful world.
If each little kid could have fresh milk each day, if all working folks had enough time to play, if each homeless soul had a good place to stay, it could be a wonderful world. Oh yes, it could be a wonderful world.
If we could consider each other a neighbor, a sister, or brother, it could be a wonderful. We're all family under one sky. We're family under one sky. All family under one sky. We're family under one sky. Now I'll sing a line and you sing it back, okay? We're people, we're animals, we're flowers and birds in flight. I said we're people, we're animals, we're flowers and birds in flight. All together, and we're all family under one sky. We're family under one sky. In here, we're all family under one sky. Family under one sky. We've got dark skin, we've got light skin, we've got straight hair and curly too. We speak English, we speak Spanish. We're different, but we're the same. Here you go. And we're all a family under one sky. We're a family under one sky. We're all a family under one sky. We're a family.
There's loads of books and loads of tales about Anansi, so be sure and check some of them out at the library. This is one where Anansi is not so much a trickster as he can't control himself. They ever talk about self-control with you here at school? He has a problem with self-control. But Anansi, she said, whatever you do, don't go and touch those beans. They're very hot and you could burn yourself. What did I say, Anansi? He said, I won't touch those. Himself standing right in front of that pot of beans. He said, it won't hurt if I just take a taste. Grandma doesn't have to know. He took it out of the bowl. He blew on it. It was good. Maybe just one more. Maybe another. I've had 3. A 4th one's not going to make any difference. Well, Anansi got to thinking he'd like some more of that, and he wanted it to cool faster, so he took off his hat and he put the beans in the hat. Well, the birds suddenly flew in the kitchen window where Anansi was, and the neighbors started pounding on the door. They said, Anansi, let us in, let us get those birds, they're eating Grandma's beans. Well, there was Anansi, all those people at the door, and Anansi had those beans in his hat. You think he wanted them to see him with the beans in his hat? No. He had to hide them. Where do you think he could hide them?
Put it on his head.
Put it on. That's exactly what Anansi did. He grabbed those beans, he put them on his head. But you know, those beans had not had a chance to cool yet. And then they started to leave and they saw Anansi standing there like this. They said, Anansi, what's wrong? He said, nothing's wrong. You can leave now. You can leave now. Well, Anansi was starting to sweat. The sweat was pouring down his face. He was starting to cry from the heat. They said, Anansi, no, we need to help you. We're your friends, Anansi. Let us help you. Anansi just wanted them to leave. They wouldn't leave. He said, no, it's all right. It's all right. They're fine. I'm fine. You can leave now. His voice was getting higher and higher. They said, Anansi, Anansi, let us help you. And Anansi was going like this, and he grabbed his hat and he started to move it around, to move the beans around. They said, Anansi, what are you doing? He said, it's a dance. It's a dance. I said, what kind of dance? He said, it's a hat-shaking dance. It's the hat-shaking dance. They said, Anansi, that's a wonderful dance. Let us do it with you. So they all got up and they started doing the hat-shaking dance. Go ahead, do it with me. And they started shaking that hat every now and then. They go, woo! Okay, well, let's go to Latin America. I want to sing you a little song and tell you a story that comes from there. The song is called Mi Casa es Su Casa. What does that mean? Who can tell me what that means? What does that mean? My house is your house. That's right, it's a way of welcoming somebody. It's like saying, make yourself at home. Feel like you're at home. My house is your house. In this song, the woman who wrote it, Michele Valeri, is kind of telling about her adventures when she traveled throughout Latin America. And she found that every place she went, the people were so nice to her. And most of them were poor people. They might have only one chair in their house, but they would say, sit down in that chair. They might have one Coca-Cola in the refrigerator. They'd give her that. If she stayed the night, they'd give her the one mattress. They were so nice to her, she wanted to write a song about her. But because she was writing for kids, she thought it'd be fun to make it animals instead of people who are inviting her in. The first animal who invites her in is an anaconda. She's floating down the Amazon River. Now, really, you wouldn't want an anaconda to invite you home. Not a real anaconda. But this is a pretend song, okay? And then she's hiking in the Andes Mountains with a Quechua guide. That's a Quechua Indian. They lived there a long time before the Spanish ever came over with a Quechua guide. And there was an Inca ruin. That's the old city of Machu Picchu, okay, on the mountainside. And there was a llama or a llama right there, big, fuzzy. Casa es su casa, help me whenever you are near. Mi casa es su casa, sit down and rest right here. Well, I was hiking in the Andes with a Quechua guide. And she said, Mi casa es su casa, whenever you are near. Mi casa es su casa. And so to avoid doing that, the family goes to the United States and they live as migrant workers. And it's a tough life. Esperanza is no longer the rich girl on the hill. In fact, she's working right beside the girl who used to be her servant. And Esperanza needs to learn to grow up and to take responsibility and do hard work. Anybody know who Cesar Chavez is? Have you read about him in history classes? Very good. He's one of my heroes. He's kind of the Hispanic equivalent of Martin Luther King. He led the United Farm Workers who pick all the fruit and vegetables that we eat that come from the West, and help them organize so that they would be treated decently. And that's him leading a very famous march where he started out on a 400-mile march with 14 people to the capital of Sacramento to demand the right to bargain as a union. And when he got to the capital, they had grown to 10,000 different people. And the company signed a contract.
We are sailing on, touches many hands, somos el barco, somos el mar. Yo navego en ti, tú navegas en mí. We are
is not the Bible, it's the Quran. And there are 5 pillars. We believe in no God but Allah, and Allah just means God in Arabic. To believe in God, and that Muhammad is his prophet. To pray 5 times a day. To fast during the month of Ramadan. To give a share of your personal wealth to the poor. That's one of the 5 pillars. And to perform a pilgrimage, which a lot of people don't get to do, but that's a goal, to Mecca at least once in a lifetime. And many Muslim women wear a hijab over their head. Okay? Now most mosques, the equivalent of a church, don't look like that. That's a big and beautiful one in the capital of Turkey, Istanbul. And it just happens that the first story I'm going to tell you comes from that country of Turkey. It's one of many, many stories told about a man who really lived, whose name was Nasrudin. Hoja wasn't really his last name. Hoja means teacher. He was considered a teacher, but he taught in a very odd way. Many of the stories that people have been telling ever since show him sometimes acting very foolish, and other times he acts very wise. And sometimes there's kind of a mix of the two. The story I want to tell you, I learned from another book, that you can find a version of it in the picture book called The Hungry Coat. Okay? It goes like this. One time, the Hoja was invited to a banquet at the home of the Mukhtar, a very important man in his village. Now, the Hoja was considered a wise man, Nasrudin, in his village. And he loved to eat. So being invited to a banquet was perfect. All day long, as he was working in the garden, he was thinking, all that delicious food, as I'm eating that food, people will be asking my opinion about all kinds of interesting things. It will be great. All day long, he was thinking about that as he was working in the garden, and he was thinking so hard that he didn't pay attention to the time. And he discovered when he had finished and he went home, that if he wanted to bathe and he wanted to dress up in his fine clothes, he was going to be late for the banquet. He didn't want to do that. So he went on to the banquet in his work clothes, with dirt on his clothes and dirt on his hands, dirt on his face. And when he walked into the banquet, even though he was sure that the Mukhtar recognized him, the Mukhtar didn't pay him any attention. In fact, nobody did. And they seated him at the end of a long table in the back of the hall. And when the food finally came down to his end of the table, there was nothing left. So the Hoja, with his stomach empty and his feelings hurt, slipped out of the banquet and he went back home. When he got home, he bathed himself completely, and then he put on his finest clothes. He put on an elegant shirt and baggy pants and a great big turban, and on top of it all, he put on his new fur coat. Well, this time, when he got to the banquet, the Mukhtar rose to meet him. And the servant took him and seated him right there beside the Mukhtar in the place of honor. The servants brought him tray after tray of delicious food, and he would take the foods and people were asking him questions, but as he took the food, he didn't eat it. He started stuffing it into the pockets of his coat. And when he ran out of room in the pockets, he started rubbing it into his shirt. He was rubbing it all over his shirt. The kids thought it was funny, you know. Here he was, the wise man in town, he was rubbing food in his shirt. But the Mukhtar was kind of embarrassed, and he watched him for a while, and finally he said, Hoja, he said, what are you doing? Have you lost your mind? No, said the Hoja. I haven't lost my mind. I'm just trying to teach you a little lesson. You see, when I came here earlier dressed in my work clothes, you barely acknowledged me, and you seated me in a corner way back in the corner of the hall, where there was no food left for me and really no one to talk to. When I came back dressed in these elegant clothes, you treated me as the guest of honor. Well, I haven't changed. I'm the same person who came here before. It's only my clothes that have changed. So, it must be my clothes that you're honoring. Out of respect, I'm feeding them first. Eat my clothes, he said. You are the guest of honor. And with that, he stood up and he left the hall.
That it's not important what a person looks like on the outside.
Irish eat lots of potatoes, and in the old days they used to really depend on those potatoes. And this is a story about Jamie O'Rourke and the big potato. Jamie O'Rourke was the laziest man in Ireland. He would do anything to keep from working. He would sit around all day, and his wife Eileen would say, Jamie O'Rourke, we'll have nothing to eat this winter if you don't get up and pick out the praties. But then one day, Eileen really did hurt her back, and she was laid up in bed, and Jamie had nobody to bring him his food. Well, you would think that Jamie O'Rourke would finally get up out of his bed, get up out of his chair or whatever, and go out and dig out the praties. But remember, Jamie O'Rourke was the laziest man in Ireland. To himself he says, with Eileen sick in bed, there'll be no praties. With no praties, there'll be no food. With no food, I'll starve to death. There's no telling how soon death will be knocking at my door. I'd best go and confess my sins to Father O'Malley so that I can go to heaven when I die. And so in the middle of the night, Jamie O'Rourke got up out of bed and started down the hill to the church. Well, about halfway down the hill, he heard a little singing and tapping. He come up nice and close, and he pulled back the ferns. And there, sitting in the middle of the moonlight, was a leprechaun. He was tapping on some fairy shoes, and Jamie knew just what to do. He grabbed that little fella by the coattails and he held him up. Let me go! Let me go! Cried the little fella. Not on your life, said Jamie. Not until you take me to your pot of gold. Oh, Mr. Mortal Man, he said, I'm just starting out in the trade and I've only got 1 or 2 pieces of gold. He says, won't you take a wish instead? A wish, says Jamie, and what would I be wishing for? Me, whose wife is sick in bed and can't get up and dig out the praties and I'm about to starve to death. Well, says the leprechaun, you could wish for a magic potato seed, a giant potato seed. All you'd have to do is plant it and water it a couple of times, and you'd have the great, biggest potato you've ever seen in your life, and you could eat on that potato all winter long. Well, when Jamie O'Rourke got home and told Eileen what he had done, she says, Jamie O'Rourke, you're not only the laziest man in Ireland, but you're a fool as well. What are you going to do with this so-called magic potato seed? You'll see, says Jamie. I'll plant it, and you'll see. She did see, for in a few weeks, up out of the ground came an enormous potato. 150 years ago in Ireland, the potatoes got a disease called the blight. It came across the ocean on the ships, and all their potatoes turned bad. You couldn't eat them. And those people who depended on them couldn't find anything to eat. They were all starving to death. And they lived in houses owned by the English, who didn't treat them very well, all these poor people, and they kicked them out of the houses. This is a chapter book, tells all about it. It's a great historical novel, Nori Ryan's song. And so 1 million of them boarded ships and they came to the United States.
And most of them went to work on the railroads. They were very important in building.
They had a work song that they loved to sing called Paddy on the Railroad. It's got a great chorus. In 1841, I put me corduroy breeches on. I put me corduroy breeches on to work upon the railway. Fill-a-me-ory-ory-ay, 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 to work upon the railway. That's your
Fill-a-me-ory-ay, fill-a-me-ory-ory-ay, fill-a-me-ory-ory-ay, to work. There's another kind of story that's sort of like that. We call it a wisdom tale. It's maybe not, doesn't say what the lesson is usually, but you can see what the lesson is. And I want to tell you a wisdom tale that comes from China. In this book, it's called The Empty Pot. And it's about a man who was the emperor. China used to be ruled by emperors. And this emperor was getting very old. He was going to die, and he didn't have any children, didn't have a son or a daughter to pass on being an emperor to. So he thought, well, how am I going to pick somebody who will be the next emperor? Who would be a good emperor? He thought, I don't know. And then he was sitting out in his garden one day, and he loved plants so much, he said to himself, he said, I know, I'll let the plants decide. He put out word that he wanted all the boys and girls in China who would like to be the next emperor to come to his palace and see him. He said to them, I'm going to give each of you a flower seed. And you take that flower seed home and do the best you can to grow a flower with that seed. Now, he said, you've got to use that flower seed so it'll be fair. There was one boy there whose name was Pink, and he just loved the garden. He was the best gardener. He put in that seed in some rich soil, and then he watered it, and he weeded it, and he came out every morning to see if he could see his plant peeking up out of the ground. So every morning he came, and every morning he saw the same thing. There was nothing growing. An empty pot. He felt ashamed. He felt embarrassed. He saw all those boys and girls with beautiful flowers, but he went and he just stood there, and in a little while the emperor came out to the courtyard where all the boys and girls and their parents were gathered. And you know, he looked out at all those beautiful flowers, and you'd think he would have been smiling, wouldn't you, to see such beautiful flowers? But he wasn't. He was frowning. Just like that. Until he saw that little boy with that empty pot. When he saw the little boy, he smiled. He went over to him. He said, what happened? Why don't you have a flower in that pot? The little boy explained. The emperor nodded his head. He put his arm around that little boy, and the two of them turned around. They faced everybody, and he said, this will be the next emperor of China. He said, I don't know where the rest of you got your seeds. He said, the seeds I gave you were boiled. None of them would grow, he said. You must have all the rest of you gone and gotten another seed like I told you not to do. Who followed instructions, who was honest and hardworking, and I'm sure he's going to make a fine emperor. And that little boy grew up to be a kind and just and very wise emperor. And that is the story of the empty pot. Sign for grow. A seed under the ground, here's your hand, it's the surface, comes up. Gonna make this garden grow, turns into a flower, okay? Inch by inch and row by row. Gonna make this garden grow. Get yourself a hoe in your hand. All I need is a rake and hoe, some more sign language, and a patch of fertile ground. What is that? Next part starts the same, inch by inch and row by row. Get a big sack of seeds, hold it up with this hand, reach in with your other hand, get a handful and scatter it out. Please bless these seeds I sow, please warm them from below till the rain comes tumbling down. Okay, now let's see if you can do your part with me playing the guitar. You ready?
Inch by inch and row by row, flower grow. Don't make this garden go rake and hoe. All I need is a rake and hoe and a patch of fertile ground. Inch by inch and row by row. Sowing seeds, please bless these seeds I sow. Please warm them from me till the rain comes tumbling down. And there I am at my friend Wagatsama's house way up in the country. Does that look like me? It doesn't, but that's me 50 years ago. That's me in 1970, 48 years ago. And I'm smashing some soybeans. And that's a little neighborhood festival. They're doing an old dance with those strange masks on, and a woman and her baby in the crowd watching them. That's my friend Wagatsama with me. We're at Deer Park. The deer are tame. There are many beautiful, beautiful parks there. And there I am in the Japanese Alps, and I stayed in a little cabin overnight and talked with that girl in Japanese with my dictionary. Met lots of friendly people there. It's wonderful to travel around to different countries and cultures, and you know, if you can't do it yourself, taking a plane or a train, you know how you can do it? Come to the library and read a book.
If we could consider each other a neighbor, a sister, or brother, it could be a wonderful, wonderful world. It could be a wonderful world. Oh yes, it could be a wonderful world.
If each little kid could have fresh milk each day, if all working folks had enough time to play, if each homeless soul had a good place to stay, it could be a wonderful world. Oh yes, it could be a wonderful world.
If we could consider each other a neighbor, a sister, or brother, it could be a wonderful